The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of angry bees, each flicker stabbing at Elena Martinez's nerves as she clutched her daughter's tiny hand. 6-year-old Mia, pale and fragile in her hospital gown, looked up with eyes too big for her face and whispered, "Will I be okay, Mama?" Elena's heart shattered, but she forced a smile, knowing the $50,000 surgery Mia needed was a mountain they hadn't yet climbed. Elena had fought for everything: her daughter, her identity, her place in a world that often turned its back on her. Growing up in a conservative Catholic family in Fresno, California, she'd been disowned at 19 when she came out as a lesbian. Her mother's words still burned, "You're no daughter of mine." Exiled, Elena built a life in San Francisco, piecing together a family with Mia, adopted at birth, and her partner Sarah Gwynn. They were a trio bound by love, not blood, in a city that promised acceptance but didn't always deliver. Their Mission District apartment was small but warm, filled with Mia's drawings and Sarah's vinyl records, a sanctuary against the world's judgment. That evening, as Elena tucked Mia into bed, her phone buzzed with a message from a number she hadn't seen in years, her half-sister Carla. "I'm in trouble, Elena. I need a place to stay. Please." Elena stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button. Carla, 10 years younger, was the daughter of their father's second marriage, a stranger Elena had only met a handful of times. Their father had died a decade ago, and Carla's mother had kept her at arm's length, wary of Elena's lifestyle. Why now? Elena wondered, but the plea tugged at a part of her she couldn't ignore. Family, however fractured, was still family. Sarah, leaning against the kitchen counter with a glass of wine, raised an eyebrow when Elena told her, "You sure about this? We don't even know her." Sarah's voice was steady, but her dark eyes held a flicker of worry. At 35, Sarah was the pragmatic one, a graphic designer who'd grown up in Oakland, navigating her own battles as a queer Asian woman. She'd seen Elena's soft heart broken before, and the instinct to protect their little family was fierce. "I can't turn her away," Elena said, her voice soft but resolute. "She's got no one else." Sarah sighed, setting her glass down, and pulled Elena into a hug. "Okay, but we keep our eyes open. Mia comes first." Elena nodded, her cheek against Sarah's leather jacket, the familiar scent of cedar and ink grounding her. Carla arrived the next day, a 28-year-old whirlwind with bleached blonde hair and a nervous laugh. Her suitcase was battered, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "Thank you, Elena. I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice cracking. She spoke of a bad breakup, a lost job, and debts piling up in Los Angeles. Elena saw echoes of her own past in Carla's desperation, a young woman cast out, searching for solid ground. She opened their home, giving Carla the couch and a promise of a fresh start. Over the next few weeks, Carla slotted into their lives with surprising ease. She charmed Mia with silly stories, helped with dishes, and even joined Elena and Sarah at the farmer's market, carrying bags of kale and peaches. Elena felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was a chance to rebuild what her family had broken. Maybe Carla was the sister she'd always wanted. But Sarah remained cautious, noticing how Carla's questions about their finances, casual at first, grew sharper. "How do you afford this place?" Carla asked one night, eyeing the apartment. Elena brushed it off, mentioning their savings for Mia's surgery, but Sarah's jaw tightened. Mia's condition worsened as spring turned to summer. Her congenital heart defect, a ticking clock, required surgery sooner than expected. Elena and Sarah worked overtime, Elena as a social worker, Sarah freelancing late into the night to scrape together the funds. They launched a crowdfunding campaign, pinning their hopes on the kindness of strangers. The community rallied, but the goal was still $10,000 short. Every dollar was sacred, stored in a savings account labeled Mia's Future. Carla, meanwhile, seemed to settle in. She got a part-time job at a coffee shop and talked about enrolling in community college. Elena was proud, seeing her half-sister's resilience. But small things nagged at her. Carla's late-night phone calls, the way she'd linger near Elena's laptop, the occasional evasiveness about her past. Sarah voiced her unease one night as they lay in bed. "Something's off, Elena. She's too curious about our money." Elena wanted to argue, to believe in Carla's good intentions, but doubt began to creep in. One evening, Elena came home to find Carla packing her suitcase. "I got a job offer in Seattle," Carla said, her smile too bright. It's a fresh start. Elena was stunned but supportive, hiding her hurt. Carla promised to visit to stay in touch. She left the next morning. Her departure abrupt but not suspicious until Elena checked the savings account 2 days later. The balance was gutted. $10,000, every cent of the crowdfunding money was gone. Elena's hand shook as she stared at the screen, the numbers blurring through her tears. Sarah rushed to her side, her face paling as she saw the damage. Carla, Sarah whispered, the name a curse. They called the bank but the transfer was clean, linked to an account in Carla's name. Elena's heart pounded with betrayal, but worse was the fear Mia's surgery was now out of reach. The police station was cold, the kind of sterile chill that seeped into Elena's bones as she sat across from a detective who looked too tired to care. Without concrete evidence, it's hard to prove theft, he said, scribbling notes. Family disputes get messy. Elena wanted to scream that this wasn't a dispute, it was a betrayal, a knife in the heart of her daughter's future. Instead, she nodded, her voice lost in the ache of disbelief. Back home, Sarah was a storm of action, scouring Carla's social media for clues. She found a new post, a selfie of Carla in a sleek Seattle cafe. Her smile smug, captioned, "New city, new me." Sarah slammed her laptop shut. She's not getting away with this. Elena, still reeling, felt torn between rage and guilt. Had she been too trusting? Had her need for family blinded her to Carla's true nature? The questions gnawed at her as she watched Mia sleep, her daughter's shallow breaths a reminder of what was at stake. Sarah took charge, contacting a lawyer friend who specialized in fraud. "We need to track the money," Sarah said, her voice steady but fierce. "Carla's not smart enough to cover her tracks completely." They discovered the transfer had gone to a bank in Seattle, but the account was already drained. The funds moved to an untraceable offshore account. The lawyer shook his head. "She planned this. It's not just impulsive." Elena's stomach churned. Carla hadn't just stolen. She'd schemed. Desperate, Elena reached out to Carla, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. "Why, Carla? That was for Mia," she pleaded in one, her voice breaking. Sarah, meanwhile, dug deeper, finding a trail of Carla's past evictions, unpaid debts, a pattern of manipulation. "She's done this before," Sarah said, showing Elena a court record from Los Angeles. Conned a roommate out of rent money. Elena felt sick, realizing how easily she'd been played. The community rallied around them. Neighbors brought casseroles, friends boosted the crowdfunding page, and a local queer support group organized a fundraiser. Elena was humbled, but the gap in funds remained. Mia's surgery was scheduled in 6 weeks, and the hospital wouldn't budge without payment. Elena spent nights awake, haunted by the image of Carla's smile, the sister she'd hoped to save, now a thief who endangered her child. One morning, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $2,000 and a note in Carla's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was." Elena stared at the words, torn between fury and confusion. Was this guilt or another manipulation? Sarah scoffed. "It's a drop in the bucket. She's taunting us." But Elena couldn't let go of the flicker of remorse in the note. She tracked the postmark to a small town outside Seattle, a lead they hadn't had before. They hired a private investigator, dipping into their own savings to fund it. The PI, a gruff woman named Linda, found Carla living in a cheap motel, working at a bar. "She's not living large," Linda reported. "Most of the money's gone, probably to debts or bad investments." Elena didn't care about the why anymore. She wanted justice. But more than that, she wanted Mia to be okay. The PI suggested confronting Carla in person. A risky move, but their only shot at answers. Elena and Sarah drove to Washington, a tense 12-hour journey. They left Mia with Sarah's parents, who doted on her despite their initial unease with their daughter's relationship. The road trip was heavy with silence, broken only by Sarah's hand squeezing Elena's at rest stops. "We'll get through this," Sarah said, her voice a lifeline. Elena nodded, but her heart was a battlefield: love for Sarah, fear for Mia, and a raw wound where trust in Carla had been. In the motel parking lot, Elena's breath caught as she saw Carla step out, lighting a cigarette. She looked thinner, her bravado gone. Elena's first instinct was to scream, but Sarah's steady hand on her arm kept her grounded. "Let's do this smart," Sarah whispered. They approached and Carla froze, her eyes wide with something like fear or shame. "Why, Carla?" Elena's voice trembled, cutting through the damp Seattle air. Carla dropped her cigarette, grinding it under her heel, her eyes darting between Elena and Sarah. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she stammered, but the words felt hollow, a weak defense against the weight of her betrayal. The motel room was cramped, smelling of stale coffee and regret. Carla sat on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting in her lap as Elena and Sarah stood, unwilling to let her feel at ease. "I was drowning," Carla said, her voice low. "Debt's bad people after me. I saw the account and I panicked." Elena's fists clenched. "That was Mia's life, Carla." "Her life." Carla flinched, tears spilling, but Sarah's glare was unforgiving. "You don't get to cry now," Sarah said. "You knew what that money was for." Carla's story unraveled creditors hounding her, a gambling habit she couldn't shake, a life spiraling since her teens. She'd seen Elena's openness as an opportunity, not a kindness. The $2,000 check was all she had left, sent in a fleeting moment of guilt. "I thought I could pay it back," she said, but the lie was thin. Elena wanted to believe there was good in her sister, but the evidence was gone, spent on debts that weren't theirs. The confrontation yielded no miracles. Carla had no more money to give, no way to undo the damage. Elena's heart ached for the sister she'd imagined, the one who might have been family. Instead, she faced a stranger who'd stolen from a child. Sarah pushed for legal action, but the PI warned it could take months, with no guarantee of recovering the funds. Time was a luxury Mia didn't have. Back in San Francisco, Elena threw herself into saving Mia. She took on extra shifts, her body aching from exhaustion, while Sarah designed flyers for more fundraisers. Their community stepped up. A drag show raised $3,000, a bake sale another $1,500. But the clock was ticking and Mia's health was fading. At a checkup, the doctor's face was grim. "We need to operate soon, or the risks increase." Elena nodded, her throat tight, as Mia squeezed her hand. One night, Elena found Sarah staring at their wedding photo, taken 2 years ago on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. "We're enough, right?" Sarah asked, her voice raw. "You, me all make it through this." Elena pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "We're more than enough," she whispered, though fear gnawed at her. Their love was a fortress, but even fortresses could crack under pressure. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. A local news outlet picked up their story, framing it as a tale of resilience against betrayal. Donations poured in $5 here, $100 there. Strangers moved by Mia's smile and Elena and Sarah's devotion. The crowdfunding page surged, closing the gap to $5,000. Elena cried reading the messages. "You're not alone. Mia deserves to shine." For the first time in weeks, hope felt real. But hope was fragile. Mia caught a cold, her weakened heart struggling under the strain. The hospital admitted her, and Elena and Sarah took turns sleeping in the chair beside her bed. Elena prayed not to the God of her childhood, but to the universe, to love, to anything that would keep her daughter breathing. Sarah held her hand, their fingers laced, a silent vow to fight together. Carla's name came up again when the PI called. She'd been arrested for passing bad checks in Seattle, a small justice that felt hollow. Elena didn't care about punishment anymore. She just wanted Mia safe. But the call stirred something in her, a need to understand why Carla had fallen so far, and whether she could ever climb back. Mia's hospital room was a cocoon of beeps and soft light, her small body dwarfed by tubes and monitors. Elena sat vigil, her hand stroking Mia's hair, while Sarah coordinated with the crowdfunding team from the hallway. The community's support had pushed them to within $2,000 of the surgery fund, but every hour felt like a race against time. Mia stirred, murmuring, "I love you, Mama," and Elena's heart clenched, torn between love and terror. The news story had gone viral, shared across social media with hashtags like Save Mia and Love Wins. A queer-owned brewery hosted a fundraiser, and a tech CEO, moved by their story, donated $1,000 anonymously. Elena and Sarah were overwhelmed, their gratitude tinged with exhaustion. They hadn't slept properly in days, their lives a blur of hospital visits and desperate planning. Yet, in the quiet moments, they found strength in each other. Sarah's hand on Elena's back. Elena's whispered, "I love you," in the dark. Elena's thoughts kept drifting to Carla, not with anger now, but with a hollow curiosity. She wrote a letter, not expecting a reply, pouring out her pain and questions. Did you ever care about us? About Mia. She mailed it to the jail where Carla was being held, a small act of closure. To her surprise, a response came a week later. Carla's handwriting was shaky, her words raw. I was selfish, Elena. I saw your life, your family, and I was jealous. I'm sorry. The apology didn't erase the damage, but it cracked something open in Elena. A faint hope for redemption, not for Carla, but for herself. The hospital scheduled Mia's surgery for the following week, the final $2,000 secured by a last-minute donation from a lesbian couple who'd faced their own family rejection. Elena cried in Sarah's arms, the relief so sharp it hurt. They spent the night before the surgery with Mia, reading her favorite book about a brave girl who tamed dragons. Mia giggled, her eyes bright despite her frailty, and Elena clung to that sound, a lifeline in the storm. The morning of the surgery, Elena and Sarah stood outside the operating room, their hands clasped so tightly their knuckles whitened. She's strong, Sarah said, her voice steady but her eyes wet. Like her mom's. Elena nodded, unable to speak, her mind a whirl of prayers and promises. The hours crawled by, each minute an eternity, until the surgeon emerged, his face tired but smiling. She did great. She's going to be okay. Elena collapsed into Sarah's arms, sobbing with relief. They were allowed to see Mia soon after, her small chest rising and falling steadily in recovery. Elena kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're our miracle." Sarah stood beside her, their fingers entwined, a silent vow that they'd survived the worst together. Back home they began to rebuild. The apartment felt lighter, filled with Mia's laughter as she recovered. Elena and Sarah took turns caring for her, their love a quiet rhythm beneath the chaos. But Carla's shadow lingered. Elena learned from the PI that Carla had pleaded guilty to the check fraud, facing a short sentence. Part of Elena wanted to hate her, but another part saw a broken woman, lost in her own pain. One evening, as they watched Mia draw at the kitchen table, Sarah spoke softly. Do you think people can change? Elena hesitated, thinking of her own journey from a rejected daughter to a mother and partner who'd built a family against the odds. I think they can try, she said. But it's not our job to fix them. Sarah nodded, her hand finding Elena's, their love a steady anchor. Summer returned to San Francisco, the fog rolling in like a gentle reminder of resilience. Mia, now 7, ran through the park, her laughter echoing as she chased a butterfly, her heart strong and steady post-surgery. Elena and Sarah watched from a bench, their shoulders touching, a quiet joy settling between them. The scars of the past year, Carla's betrayal, the desperate fight for Mia's life hadn't faded, but they'd softened, woven into the fabric of their family's story. Elena had started volunteering at a local queer youth center, sharing her story to help others navigate rejection and find their own strength. She spoke of love, not just for Sarah and Mia, but for herself, a love hard won against a world that hadn't always been kind. Sarah, inspired, designed a mural for the Centera, vibrant scene of 2 women and a child, hands linked, standing tall against a stormy sky. That's us, she told Elena, her smile soft but fierce. Carla's sentence ended, and she sent one last letter. I'm trying to be better, she wrote, mentioning a job in therapy. Elena read it with mixed feelings, choosing not to respond but keeping the letter in a drawer. Forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, and she wasn't ready to walk it yet. Instead, she focused on the present, Mia's giggles, Sarah's warmth, the community that had carried them through. One evening they took Mia to the beach where they'd first fallen in love. The golden hour bathed the sand in light, and Mia ran to the waves, her pigtails bouncing. Elena and Sarah stood hand in hand, the same spot where they once dreamed of a future together. We made it, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah kissed her temple, whispering, we always will. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was there's a testament to love's power to heal, to endure, to rebuild. Mia called them over, holding up a shell she'd found, her smile brighter than the sunset. Elena and Sarah joined her, their laughter mingling with the waves, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, by courage, by love that refused to break. The world had rejected Elena for who she was, and Carla had stolen from her but she'd opened her heart anyway. In that act of vulnerability, she'd found strength not just to survive, but to thrive. Mia's surgery was a success, their love unshaken, and their home a sanctuary once more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena knew they'd face whatever came next, together unbreakable. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.